this video, we're going to be reviewing and talking about the Ruger New Vaquero. For many of you in cowboy action shooting or just enthusiasts of the shooting sports, you'll recognize these pistols. Many of them are now clones off of the traditional Colt single action Army that we all knew from the old cowboy days. The original Vaqueros that Ruger came out with was a slightly larger version of the single action Army, was made between 1993 and 2005. In 2005, the new Vaquero was introduced, which is what you see here on the table today. These are actually close in size to the original Colt single action Army pistols that we were used to seeing back in the Old West days. So Ruger made these changes for a number of different reasons, but these are typically a little bit smaller in size, and we'll talk about what that means as far as what you're able to shoot out of them as a result. So first off, what are some of the good things about these pistols? First off, these are very high quality single action shooting options. There's a number of different pistol types out there today. Ruger really does make an excellent single action Colt clone with these options. They also come in very diverse caliber options. You can shoot them everywhere from you originalists can shoot the 45 Colt I have here in the blued on the table today. You can shoot 44-40, 44 Remington Magnum, or the most popular is the 357 Magnum. So you have a number of different options to be able to fire out of them. Another thing that I personally like about these is they have what's called a transfer bar safety system in the pistol. So the old single actions, you're going to see a firing pin that is actually on the hammer, and that firing pin will lay down onto the chamber, and as a result of that, you typically were not able to safely carry that sixth round in the pistol itself, simply because you didn't want to have that firing pin laying down or potentially hitting that onto a live chamber. So most people would simply in their first round skip and then do the remaining 5 rounds and then cock it back, and they were down onto the empty round. You don't need that now with the transfer bar. The transfer bar literally allows the protection of the hammer to reach the actual firing pin. So once I go back on the trigger, it is removed. So that safety bar is that gap in between the firing pin and the hammer, and when I'm not pulling on the trigger itself, it doesn't fill the gap to hit the pin. So it is a safe system to now carry 6 rounds on, which is a pro for many people. Many people that are the originalists will like the old hammer system, but the reality is this is a good innovation that now allows you to safely carry all 6 rounds to the chamber. What are some of the drawbacks? Well, it's a typical revolver, so they get dirty when you fire them, especially the 45s. A lot of the 45 Colt loads can be dirty. Many people talk about that. So again, nothing unusual, but it's typical of firing a revolver. Another drawback, especially on the 45 Colt side, is the new Vaqueros cannot handle the high pressure 45 Colt loads that were made for the other of the 45s out there, including the original Vaquero, which were larger frames and larger barrels and could handle. The new ones are not designed to do that, so be careful when you shoot high pressure loads, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then, of course, another potential drawback, and I'm not sure that's a drawback. Most people would say that's a great thing, you know, to have to. But when you buy these and want to get involved with cowboy action shooting, don't be surprised when you have to lay down for 2 of them as opposed to 1 when you buy them. And many people will want, and unlike what you see here on the table, they're going to want 2 matching with matching calibers, and even more fun would be to get the ones that have matching serial numbers when they can get them. So, but that is another part of that as well. Now, going caliber. As we talked about earlier, the 2 I have on the table are the most popular. You're going to the 357 Magnum and then the 45 caliber. The 45 Colt, this is the traditional caliber out there. You will typically find loads that range anywhere from 135 to upward 300 grain loads that you can fire out of them. The most common that you're going to see people shoot is the 250 grain loads. You also have different variants. You've got, for example, the typical, lead point, or you can have things such as now Lehigh makes the fluted ammo. You have hard cast ammo for hunting and four-legged predator type situations, etc. But you have a lot of ammo options between the two. And the 357 Magnum gives you a little bit more diversity, however. because not only are you able to fire the 357, but you're also able to download it to the 38 Special Plus P, as well as the regular 38 Special rounds, which allows you typically to shoot, whether it be for fun or for defense or in cowboy action shooting, much more 5 caliber loads for it. And now I know many, well, if you're into reloading, you can get the cost down, but typically for the average shooter, it is much cheaper to shoot specials than it is the 45 Colts. And you can also see a difference just in sheer size between these various different calibers, and just how large the 48 caliber Colt is compared to the 357 Magnum. So there are differences, and that's one of the benefits you have. Again, you can carry 6 rounds safely now in these, which is great. The original Vaquero that we talked about earlier, that came out between 1993 and 2005, could carry the Colt Plus Ps and Plus P pluses, so the high pressure loads that you would typically find from Buffalo Bore and other places like that. There's a little bit of controversy out there as to what you can shoot out of the new Vaqueros as opposed to the traditional Vaqueros, but based upon what I've seen, I do not shoot high pressure loads out of the Colt New Vaqueros. I just won't do it. There's some writing out there that it might negate your, for example, with Ruger, or it might just not be safe at all. But the reality is, if you're owning a new Vaquero, you can shoot many options for defense and other types of things. As I alluded to earlier, in the woods, you can shoot, the Keith, the hard cast bullets, or you can shoot the Lehighs for personal defense. But you've got a lot of good options without really put yourself at danger by shooting the high pressure loads. So that is one of the drawbacks you have. 45 is in the new Vaqueros is you want to stay away from the high pressure loads, the Plus Ps, the Plus P pluses, based upon everything that I know and I've read, and just to be safe, as opposed to the 357 Magnum. You can shoot 357 Magnum loads out of this pistol with no problem whatsoever. Operation, it is a Colt pistol as you would normally see. One of the main differences in the Colt is that in order to actually move this Colt, you would typically have to cock it back to get it to the point where it would start moving. With the Vaquero, all you have to do is open the loading gate now, and when you open the loading gate, the cylinder will freely cock back the actual cylinder, so, or the hammer, which again makes it really a nice option to have. Another nice thing is the disassembly of these pistols. A lot of the old traditional Colts and many of the replicas will have a screw assembly mechanism. In this case now you just have a disassembly button. And in this case, for example, you can pull out the actual pin that retains the cylinder in, and then you can pull it back and simply take out the cylinder itself, which makes it very easy and simple to both disassemble as well as in use. And then of course all you have to do is go back into the system, lock it back, and then you're all set to go. Now, as far as weight differences, what are the primary differences between the four as it applies to weight? Now, here's one of the things that you will notice is when I put on the 45 caliber Colt, in this case it comes in at 2 pounds 6.5 ounces. However, when I put in the 357 Magnum, it comes in at 2 pounds 11.5 ounces, almost 5 ounces more that you have to take for on the 357 Magnum as opposed to the 45 Colt. And there's a reason why. When you look at it, it's the same size pistol. However, the barrel is larger, naturally, because the 45 caliber is bigger, but so is the chamber. So that extra metal that you see on the 357 caliber, that takes up for that space otherwise taken by the 45 caliber bullet, is literally adding almost 5 ounces of additional weight onto the 357 Magnum as opposed to what you would have on the 45 Colt. So you have to ask yourself, is almost that 5 ounces of weight, is that something you can manage? Now, from a physics standpoint, the heavier the pistol, the more recoil it can handle comfortably, but at the same token, you also have some drawbacks as far as maneuverability and what you're doing within cowboy action shooting. As far as options, there's also different color finishes. Obviously, you see here, we've got the stainless steel, or you've got the blued or black and blued. It's really some nice options. You also have a lot of grip options out there as well, both from size as well as texture and design. In this case, I chose these types of grips, but again, you can use any type of grip options you want. There are grips that give you a better purchase onto the pistol so that you can have better handle the recoil when it comes back. One of the things I like about the single actions are it is designed to roll in your hand. So when I fire a heavier load, I don't mind this grip setting simply because it does allow myself to roll in the hand. You'll also notice that when I fire the single action, I keep my pinky under the grip itself. So many people will start start out by holding and feeling it being a little awkward because it'll arch up like this. But what I find that's useful for me and a lot of people that shoot single actions is I will fire it this way, keeping my pinky underneath the actual grip itself. This gives me the best amount of control and the best amount of management of the roll of the pistol when I fire it as well. As far as sights, there are standard cowboy fixed sight options, which gets you to another issue that people will run into, especially first timers when they buy the new Vaqueros, which is how to manage these sights. Now, traditional Colt single action armies always had what are called high front sights. And high front sights basically, in most cases, the pistol will shoot low. And what that allows you to do is to be able to file down the front sight to get the sight picture to where you actually want it for the actual rounds that you're shooting. So this is basically the cowboy version, if you will, of an adjustable sight system, which is give them the high bar front sight, will let somebody then file it down to the actual level that they want it at on the pistol. However, many people today don't realize that when they buy these pistols first off, and what they find is that many of the rounds that they shoot initially will come in low, and then they'll have to determine what to do with this. So there's some options there as far as accuracy. Let me get this out of the way, and let me show you, for example, first off, to illustrate the issue of firing low with the pistol. The first group, these were both out of my 45 caliber Colts. The first group that I fired was out of the 45 caliber Colt shooting 250 grain MagTech bullets at 30 feet. So in this case, I'm firing a little bit low to the left, but in this case, I'm around the 7 ring or just before the 7 ring with the 250 grain. But what you'll notice, however, is when I fire a hotter, lighter load, the rounds actually drop lower, down between the 5 and the 6 ring. So in this case, I shot 200 grain blazer ammunition, and what I found with the lighter grain, faster bullet coming out is they tend to shoot lower than the heavier, slower grain bullets. And this is one of the questions you're going to have to ask yourself before you start filing down your pistol, is to determine what is it the load that you actually want to file to. Because if you start filing down too much, for example, for the lower ring, 130 to 180 to 200 grain bullets that are going to shoot typically lower, you're going to have a problem when you start shooting the 250 grain plus, because in this case, they tend to shoot higher. So you have to be careful as to what you do and what your filing is on the system. So as far as accuracy is concerned, in this case, I fired 2 groups at 30 and 50 feet. This is out of the 357 Magnum version. 30 feet, this is my first group, again, firing a little bit low. And at 50 feet, again, giving myself a little bit of windage adjustment. At 50 feet, this is the group I fired. And then I did the same thing out of the 45 caliber, again, at 30 and 50 feet. And when you look at the two in comparison, there's really not that much difference as far as separation in accuracy between the two pistols relative to the caliber that they are. They're the same length barrel. Naturally, the 357 is a little bit heavier, but again, you have to go back to ultimately how you want to set your sight picture or your elevation for your pistol and how you want to do that. A lot of people will take a file and will file these down to the actual load that they want to be able to get the 6 o'clock picture on, or 6 o'clock hold. Now, part of the problems with this is, if you do this, you have to be really careful not to mar up the gun, or in this case, take off the finish, etc. So going back to the 2-shot groups I fired before with the 200 and 250 grain, this is me holding at a 6 o'clock bullseye hold. So the 6 o'clock hold was right here. So naturally right here, I'm shooting, in this case, about 3 rings low, or with the 200 grain, I'm shooting about 4 to 5 rings low at a 6 o'clock hold. So this is me holding traditionally at the top of the front sight as it comes out of the factory relative to where I could file it, where I would file the front sight down to bring the sight picture up into the bullseye range. So your only other option potentially to do this, I know there's people that I'm sure that do other things, is you could do marks onto the front notch as well. For example, I've used paint, for example, to paint onto the front sight where exactly the hold is I want it to be. The only problem you'll find is the paint tends to come off quite a bit, or you could just use a marker or something like that. But it's hard, for example, to make that as a permanent change, when in many cases, in fact, I had paint on this before I even did this testing. It comes off very quickly. In that case, you just might want to file it down. Just be careful when you file it down relative to the loads that you're going to fire, because in this case I fired the 200 round or 200 grain blazers compared to the 250 grain Magtex, and you could see just on the two differences between them, they had different points of impact for the 45 caliber Colt. I see less of this with an issue with the 357, but again, I would do the same thing. Test your rounds, determine what you're doing, especially if you're shooting lighter 38 Special as opposed to 357 Magnums, so you know where the point of hold and point of hit is for each one of these. Now, as far as alternatives to these pistols, there's a lot of them on the market today. Colt or cowboy single action shooting is becoming very popular. So Colt, of course, has their models. Uberti, Cimarron, there's a whole bunch of them that make very nice models, very comparable. Some are more traditional with the hammer spurs, etc. But you have a lot of options of them out today. Which brings us to what you would use them for. In this case, for example, cowboy action shooting is one of the most common places you're going to see people firing these pistols. It's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of variations of different things that they do, whether mounted on horseback or through different type of shooting zones. But this is one of the main benefits people are seeing from it, as well as just owning and shooting a piece of history. It is fun to own a single action pistol, to fire them, especially with the 45 caliber loads. It's a hard hitting load, so if you're going out and shooting one day, maybe out in the woods or out in the desert, really is a lot of fun, because the impact of a 45 Colt is definitely impactful, if you will, on the targets that you're shooting. So as far as overall value, very high quality pistols. They are highly reliable. They are really fun to shoot. And if you want to be a cowboy for a day, I would definitely recommend picking one of these up, because they really are great options. Give thought to two different things, especially on your pistols when you buy them. One is, what is the right caliber for you? Is it the 45 Colt, which tends to be more expensive to shoot, and you have very few down options as far as the caliber on the pistol, as opposed to the 357 Magnum, which a lot of people buy a little bit heavier, but you have a lot more diversity in the loads and the price of the loads that you can fire out of them. And then the final thing is, once you start firing them right out of the box, just be careful. Understand that you're typically going to be shooting low with many of the loads that you have out there today, and especially in the case with the 45 Colts, the heavier and slower the loads, the higher they're going to typically hit point of aim, as opposed to your faster, smaller loads that are typically going to be shooting lower. So be careful when